So like I said, for today, we're a play in 3 acts. First, I'm just going to talk a little bit about an update on remote services, providing remote special education services on a temporary basis. So that'll be the first thing we talk about. Then I'm going to go in depth and really provide a kind of soup to nuts overview of IDEA Equitable Services. Then I'm really pleased to turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Jonathan Spadafora, who's going to walk us through a new online portal for providing DESE with the paperwork for students who go to unapproved special education schools. So private schools is our theme for today. I'm starting with equitable services. Jonathan's going to pick up and carry the torch forward and talk about our support, the way in which you are providing DESE with the required information for students who are attending unapproved programs in the state. Really important that we've created this update to streamline the process, turn it to an online process. Jonathan is going to show you the tool that we're using and really can't wait for you to begin to use it so that hopefully we're just all on the same page about that information sharing that you have to do with us in order to get those students placed in programs like that. So here's our first topic for today. Really wanting to clarify, we've had a lot of questions that have come in about students who are maybe quarantining and whether or not they can receive their special education services while they're quarantining. So just taking you back in time a little bit, on August 20th, we released an updated FAQ. Question number 5 explained that students who can follow their schedule while they're quarantining can have their time count towards structured learning time. That time can count as being in attendance in school, if that's possible. Question that I've received from a lot of special education directors across the state is, Russell, I can't maybe have the student join their whole schedule, but I could provide some speech. I could provide, some of their special education services, but maybe not all. Can I do that? It won't count as a school day. We're not going to count them as being in attendance because they won't receive that much service, but can I do some while they're home? Can I provide some special education services? So I just want to clarify for all of us that the answer is yes. Yes, you can. This is something that is allowable. That Brian, I'm getting a notification that the Zoom is saying that the registration is closed. Uh-oh. And now I'm signed out.
Russell, it's Jamie. We're working on the issue. Kristen is doing that right now. It appears that there's a few people that are having a difficult time getting in, so you might need to go back to that first slide towards the end again. So we're working on that.
Okay, do you think they'll be able to get in?
Kristen has reopened the registration, so I'm emailing back and forth with those that are not able to get in, so we're working on that.
Yeah. Thanks to everyone, and thanks for that quick moving. The good news is we're nowhere near our cap, and so it's a funny Zoom thing, it seems like. So We're just going to be patient, and people will find their way in with us. Thankfully, I'm still on the first slide, and maybe at the end I could do a quick recap for anybody who is not able to get in. Let me just see. Somebody texted me, still the same. Rats.
We did just have a couple more participants join. It went from 217 to 219, so access must be opening up.
Yeah. All right, well, I'll come back to this slide at the end. I see the numbers going up. Thanks, Jonathan. Okay, so just a reminder then that we are saying that you could provide some services but not all, and that it would be helpful. It would perhaps cut down on a need for more compensatory later. Particularly, I've explained this before, that a student going into quarantine will not automatically create a need for compensatory, but it might. It really depends on the student. It really depends on the situation. It also depends on how many times a student might go into quarantine this year. We're working to reduce that, but if we if we can't and students are repeatedly going into quarantine, I've had special ed directors who've said to me, I just want to start this now because I don't know what the whole year is going to look like. And so, is it allowable? Is it permissible? And what I just want to clarify today is that it is permissible. What we would ask you to do is to, make sure you're communicating with families about your plans, and you would have to, because you're going to need to arrange for when the student would log on to get that, that speech session as an example. And then just making sure that we're providing access, both to students and families, right? So we need to make sure the student has the access to technology, to through internet connectivity, but also making sure that our parents know, kind of goes back to a lot of what we were doing last year around making sure our parents know how to get their children logged in and overcoming any language access barriers. So really just want to clarify that for a temporary period of time, sounds like it's working better now. Glad that some of these internet connectivity issues are getting fixed. Seeing those numbers go up. So thank you to Kristen for getting right on that. This can't be a permanent solution. So, just for that temporary time when you're not able to provide the full complement of services, particularly because a student is quarantining, we'll say we also contemplate this with some of the staffing issues that you're facing. If you needed to do something online for students while they're in school for a very short period of time, while you're working on a permanent solution, we also have conceived of that as a possibility. But I really want to stress this is temporary. This is not a permanent fix, and close communication with parents is so vital. So again, while students are quarantining, you can provide services. You don't have to, but you can. And if that just helps to keep the student engaged in their special education services, we think that's appropriate and vital. I'm going to go on now to our main topic, one of our two main topics for today, which is really a deep dive on equitable services. So we know that students with disabilities are entitled to a portion of the funding that the district receives, the federal funding that the district receives, if they are attending private schools, if they're parentally placed. In Massachusetts, we think of that as being students who attend private schools and students who are attending, who are homeschooled. I just want to start with kind of the big picture on this. As special education directors, one of the key things I would love for you to take away from today's presentation is that the students who attend the public schools in your district and the homeschooled students with disabilities and the private school students with disabilities are all your students. They are all students who you have the privilege to serve. They're all students who you are going to be able to provide supports to. And, if you take that more inclusive mindset that your job transcends both public and private, and not everyone in the district does, but you do. Some others do too, right? You're not the only one who your job as a public employee is to make sure that you're getting some services to students who attend private schools. That's also true for Title I. There are other aspects of the school department that are working on private school access. And I think it's important to just get that mindset that, your job is inclusive of private and public school students. And I've had some districts that have said to me, it just doesn't seem fair because, we're having to spend some money on private school students. It feels like it's taking away from some of the students who are in our district. And if we take that mindset that we're actually legally required to provide these services, and frankly, we want to make sure that students get access. We believe in the power of special education. We want to make sure that our students with disabilities receive these services, whether they're in our public schools or our private schools. But here's the piece of background that's important to know, if it helps at all, just to keep in mind that when your private schools in your municipality report their enrollment data to us on an annual basis, as long as they report their enrollment data to us, the piece of the pie that you receive of your federal funding gets bigger. So you receive more federal funding, more IDEA funds specifically. So your 240 grant, your 262 grant gets bigger as long as the private schools report their enrollment data to us. And so I would encourage you to, you can check on this. You can make sure on our profiles page, you can find the private school in your municipality and just check and make sure that we have that attendance data. If we don't, the enrollment data. If we don't, certainly worth your while to reach out to them because we want those funds for you. Those funds are, in a way, kind of helping to support proportionate share activities. And so we know there are some private schools that have refused, will not provide us with those data. They don't want to be involved in state government or in federal government. And so we can't compel them to do it. But there are most do, the vast majority do. And there are very good relationships between private schools and public schools and both parties making sure they understand their responsibility for this. And so again, I just hope that you'll take that kind of inclusive mindset that your job is more than just the public school students. Your job also includes the private school students. And as long as the private schools are reporting their enrollment numbers to us, to DESE, your the amount of money that you're receiving through the federal special education grants gets bigger. And so just, a little bit of maybe important background to begin as we start this kind of deeper dive on equitable services. We here at DESE have worked to create a lot of different training tools for you. And so what really kind of made us want to do this presentation today is that when I went to the new special education directors meeting, the academy that we put on back in the latter part of the summer, there were definitely a lot of questions and a lot of concern about needing to know everything that they need to know as new special ed directors about implementing equitable services. And so today, my hope is to show you our wide range of resources. What I hope you'll do as I'm showing them to you is to think about which one works best for you. Which methodology is going to help you understand the requirements that are associated with equitable services, because we have a variety of them. We have memos for you to read, we have quick resource guides, and we have this great interactive online tool. And I'm going to spend most of my time in the interactive online tool. But before I go through the information that's on this slide, just want to go a little deeper on that topic of the federal entitlement versus the state entitlement. So here's another very, very important thing. And this is unique to Massachusetts. There are not too many states in the country, like very few, and like maybe one other, but not many, maybe two, but we're talking a very limited number of states in our country where there is both the federal requirement for equitable services, right? And equitable services means you're taking a part of your federal grant and you're making some services available to some parentally placed students. And keep in mind, when I'm saying parentally placed, it's a little shortcut for both students who attend private schools and homeschooled students. So you're taking a little bit of your federal grant, an appropriate, a chunk of that federal grant, and getting services to some students, maybe not all students in your district who would qualify as eligible parentally placed students, but some are getting services through that portion of the federal grants that you pull out to support them. In Massachusetts, in addition to that, our state law, and I put the citation in the middle of this slide, also entitles all parentally placed students who are eligible for special education services are eligible for IEP services as well. And it's really important to understand that distinction, that they are different, and there is a line, they are separate from each other. And so, and we want to make sure that we're providing access to both. And so what I've seen that's worked well for a lot of special education directors and business managers is to make sure they're really accounting for those services and funding very separately. You're drawing equitable services just from your federal grant. Obviously, for IEP services, maybe you're drawing on your federal grant and your local funds, but making sure that you're accounting for both separately will really help you keep track of the difference between the two. Our students who are getting their IEP services are receiving them in a neutral site. Typically, it's the local elementary school, the local middle school, the local high school, but not always. Just has to be a neutral site. We start with, if you were to think about this as a Venn diagram, all parentally placed students can access IEP services. Some, like a little circle from within that bigger circle, can get access to equitable services. So what's really important to note is that some students will get both. There are students who will receive, for example, speech on their IEP, and they will come to the neutral site and they will get those state mandated IEP services on site. And they might also get speech on a services plan through equitable services, through proportionate share. And I've had that be sort of some cognitive dissonance at times for special education directors, particularly new special education directors. So I just really want to clarify that, we all keep in mind that some students might get both. A parent might decline and not want either, right? So there's some students who, because of parental choice in particular, might not get either. But there's always the offer for their IEP services, and then some students can also get their equitable services. And so there's sort of a matching up. Some students might get one or the other based on choice. And some students will get both, but they're distinct from each other. So we really want to talk about those equitable services coming through services plans and IEP services coming through IEPs. So a little bit more about that, because then that gets into evaluation and eligibility. So another key takeaway from today's presentation is to think through a lot about the difference between the district of residence and the district of location, location meaning where is the private school. But let's just use an easy example. I live in Melrose. There's a private school called St. Mary's. And so if a student is attending St. Mary's in Melrose, that is the district of residence, right? Like if I had chosen for my son to go to St. Mary's, and I thought I suspected that he might have a disability, I could ask Melrose to conduct an evaluation. And then he would have an entitlement to special education services through Melrose Public Schools, and the district would need to write an IEP for him. Let's just say, my office is here in Malden, right? Let's actually not use that example. So yeah, no, my office is here in Malden. Let's just imagine I live in Malden, right? My son goes to St. Mary's. I could ask the Melrose as the district of location to conduct an evaluation, right? Because if my son is going to school in a community where I don't live, it's the community's responsibility where the school exists, the location of the school, that could also do an evaluation. And my son would then join the pool for equitable services in Melrose, and Melrose would write a services plan for him, because I would not be entitled to IEP services in Melrose because Melrose is not my district of residence. My IEP services could come from Malden in that case. So I know that might be a little complicated. We're going to go over this again, but it's really important to keep in mind that the district and residence entitles the student to an IEP, district of location entitles the student to services plan. And for some students, right, they could be living and going to school in the same community. So again, they could get their IEP services and their services plan all from the same district. And like I've been saying, there's a difference between the IEP itself and the services plan. They are not one and the same. They are completely separate. And so the IEP, again, is going to be written by the district of residence. The services plan that I'll show you in a minute actually is developed by the district of location, and each student would have their own services plan. So if we can get that concept in mind, right from the beginning, about the difference between IEPs and services plans, the difference between state law and the state entitlement to all special education services, and the federal requirement for districts to offer proportionate share services, kind of, again, a pool of resources that some students who are parentally placed will access. That's maybe a good way to then lead into the rest of our presentation here today and actually start looking at the tools. So I'm just going to go back to this slide real quick. This could be a good landing page for you when you are looking at the slides later, to click on the links that are going to work for you. I'm just going to show you that we have a web page that's devoted to this topic, and I'm going to show you how to get there right now, because I know our website has changed, and on the best of days, it can be a bit difficult to navigate. So to get to our Equitable Services homepage, going to the hamburger on the left here of our homepage, I'm scrolling down to district support, clicking on special education, and then going to equitable services. And everything I'm showing you today can be accessed from this homepage. So this could be a good place to bookmark and perhaps come back to. The key thing that's here, and it's also something that's unique to Massachusetts, is we've created this interactive learning tool all about equitable services. So I'm just going to show you, it works and functions a lot. If you've interacted with any of our interactive learning tools, you'll be familiar with how it works, that you've got a table of contents here on the left. You can scroll through and get what you need. But you can also, so you can go from beginning to end by clicking through and just going from section to section. You can see how they're ticking off here on the left, or I can go right to where I need to go, right? And so one of the key things that I want to start with, and it sort of gets to my awkward conversation using my son as an example, is that remember that, we talked about this is all about eligible students who are parentally placed. There's more information on that here. But one of the pieces of this tool that I think is really essential and very, very helpful is this description of district of residence or district of location. And if you're kind of puzzling over what's my responsibility for this student, I would encourage you to go to this page and just scroll down to where we have this graphic that shows the boxes are where the student resides, the circles are where the student goes to school. So as we can see, student 1 lives in LEA A and goes to private school A. And when I click on this number above their head, it tells me about the responsibility of the LEA, who's responsible. So this student lives in LEA A, but it goes to private school B in another community. So district of residence is different than district of location. Then, I can find out what I need to do. Or a student who resides in another state and comes to that private school from across state lines, what's my responsibility? So I'd encourage you to take a look at this. There's more information about this as well in our advisory. It's Appendix D for what it's worth. And so you might take a look at that just to build out a little bit further. If you're really puzzling over district of location versus district of residence, I would encourage you to go there. So let's talk about some of the key things that as special education leaders that you need to do on an annual basis to run equitable services, to make it work for your community. And, when I was a special ed leader, thinking back on that, if I was listening to today's presentation, I would probably sit down, particularly with my administrative staff afterwards. I had several great administrative staff members who were, setting up meetings for me, making sure the IEPs got out, all of the office work associated with special education. And I would encourage you to maybe take what you're learning today and sit down and calendar out how you need to get these steps done. So for example, consultation is sort of the bedrock of equitable services. And it needs to happen on a regular basis. It needs to happen about 3 times a year. You can do it more, but our recommendation is 3 times a year. And so I would encourage you to think about getting those on the books and then asking, whoever could do some of that scheduling for you and send out the invitations, for example, that I'll talk about in a minute, just to try to run that like a machine. Just every year, that's their job. Set up the meetings, get them on the books so that, you know when they're going to be, that person just automatically sends out the invitations. Just keep it running like a machine so that you don't have to think. If you have to think about all these steps every year or during the year, right? Like all of a sudden in May, you're going to need to schedule a consultation meeting. You're going to be so busy in May, it's going to be so hard to do it. But if you have somebody who's just diligently getting these on the books, sending out the invitations so that you don't have to think about it, I think you'll get a lot further. That would be my strong recommendation. Well, let's talk about what consultation is. So consultation is really how you're working together with, and this is important, private school representatives in particular, and any representatives of homeschooled students, including parents. But keep in mind, you're talking about basically, what are the needs of the children who are parentally placed and what types of services would we want to expend, should we expend our proportionate share dollars on? And so getting together with all parties to hear their views, to consider their input is really important, really making it a collaborative process. And then, like I said, at least 3 times a year at the beginning, middle, and end of the year is really important. There are some important things to talk about during consultation. So there are some required discussion topics. Child find, how are we identifying and locating students with disabilities in who are parentally placed? How are we going to use our proportionate shared dollars? How are we going to kind of divide up that pool of parentally placed students? And what will be our process, methodology, and schedule for consultation for the year? And then exactly what will the services be? How are we going to provide those services? Are we going to contract out? Are we going to hire our own staff? But what are we going to do to provide these services? Will there be any indirect services like PD that we provide? So, talking about the provision of services is really important. You'll see in our tool, we have these interactive features. And so you can answer some questions. And on our webpage, you'll see that we have things like, we have built for you the invitation letter to send out to your private schools and to your homeschool parents, to invite them to these consultation meetings. So the written affirmation that I'm going to show you in just a second, anything you need, clicking on these links will get you there. You can just hopefully just use what we've created for you. We really try to take the guesswork out of what does it mean to invite private schools to these meetings 3 times a year, right? You're going to send out these invitations 3 times during the year. I know on my team in West Springfield, where I was special ed director, I would be turning to Diane on my team and saying to Diane, can you just get these on the books for me? Here's the meeting invitation. Can you please send this out, however many days in advance to invite the schools to come? And, you can certainly get more interactive than that. You could definitely ask, try to find times with the private schools that work the best, so that you get their involvement is really important. But at some point you need to send out that invitation, and getting it out the door will be really important. Something that's going to happen during the consultation meeting, right? During or just after, is you're going to ask for written affirmation. The people who attend, right? The representatives of the private schools who attend the meetings, anyone representing homeschool parents or homeschool parents themselves are going to we're going to ask for written affirmation. And the written affirmation form, and again, we have a sample for you, so it's easy to access, is just going to ask them to attest that they attended the meeting and that you covered these topics, that you covered all the topics that I just showed you, so that you can definitely get what you need. Jamie, are we having any more connectivity issues? Because I have a special ed director calling me right now.
It appears that there's still some challenges with the registration links.
All right, rats. All right.
I know we're working on it.
Yeah, appreciate it. We'll definitely obviously post this, and if we need to do it again, we can. So written affirmation you're going to get after the meeting, and it's just an important step in the process, and you'll just be going back over those things that I showed you that happened during consultation meetings. The participants are just going to affirm that that's what was discussed. It doesn't mean they agree with the decisions that are made, but it does show that there is approval that those topics were discussed. So I hope that helps. Again, key takeaways on consultation: 3 times a year, certain topics that you have to cover, and I'm not going to go back over those right now, but you know where to go to get them, and that you need to get written affirmation at the end. And really want to stress that, we want this to be meaningful. And so meaningful means getting people there, right? So probably, maybe there's a phone call that you or someone else needs to make to say, what time in general will work? Could we do, Wednesdays at certain time? We're going to do these 3 times a year. So could we just make this like, the 3rd Wednesday of the month when this occurs at such and such a time? So we just sort of get into a pattern of it, and we look forward to seeing you there. Let's move on to child find. So we want to make sure that we are identifying who maybe needs to be screened, who needs to be evaluated for special education services if they are parentally placed. This is so important, right? We want to make sure that if there's a student who needs special education services, that we're finding them, that we're getting to them, and that we're able to make this, get those services for them. So a few years ago, I was talking with a special education leader and asked to see what their child find notice looked like. And they showed it to me, proudly showed it to me. And what they developed was the same child find notice they were using for trying to identify 3 to 5-year-olds, right? The youngest learners, students maybe even turning 3, to come in for screening, for preschool screening, and that they were sending to doctor's offices, was the same form that they were using for parentally placed students. And, it sort of screamed like, if you are the parent of a preschool age child, please contact our district. We want to conduct screening. We want to find out what your child might need and support your child. So it wasn't bad. It was a great notice, but it may not have been helpful to the family of a third grader in a private school to take a look at that form that really, like in bold, big bold letters, talked about 3 to 5 year olds, and to think that that form was for them, right? And that notice was about if they had concerns about their child, that they too can contact the district if they have an older child, parentally placed older child. So what we've done for you is we've created, and you can, in our interactive tool, you can click right on the sample notices. We've created a sample notice for you that still talks about 3 to 5 year olds, because we do have a lot of parentally placed 3 to 5 year olds, but it doesn't that's not the lead, right? The lead is if you have concerns about your child, contact the district and we will follow up. And if your child is, in that age group in particular, we want to make sure we get your child screened for services. And so feel free to use our sample notice. Feel free to use this. And what I would encourage you to do is just to really get creative about child find. We saw that, that Q&A that just came out from OSEP a few weeks ago. They really asked us to use as many modalities as possible, social media, getting to events, just making sure that we're really putting the message out there that if you have concerns anywhere in our community, right, not just parentally placed students, but anywhere in our community, we want to find your child. We want to get them screened. We want to get them evaluated. And so, just getting creative about child find notification. You can take the language in our form and certainly push it out in different ways. How we have it formatted, you can certainly change that, and you can change the language too. But hopefully our sample form takes the guesswork out. And, my encouragement for you is to very much make child find an ongoing activity. So again, if I was back as a special education director and I was sitting down with Diane on my team as my executive assistant, talking to her about this, I would say, can we just get into a pattern of like, how we're going to send out our child find notices repeatedly throughout the year, not just once a year. So it's an ongoing activity, and it's discussed during consultation anyway. So maybe during consultation, we're saying, have we gotten the notifications out? How else can we reach families? How else can we make sure that our families are hearing that they can come to us if they have concerns? Now, one of the tricky things about proportionate share is there's something called child find and child count, and they're very, very different. So child count is the way in which we determine how many students are attending who are parentally placed, who are eligible for special education services and need to be counted for proportionate share. So this, as opposed to child find, which is ongoing, right? We need to be doing this repeatedly throughout the year. Child count is something that we do once a year during a particular time period, October 1st to December 1st. We need to sort of just take that accounting of how many students are attending private schools who are eligible for special education services. And again, keep in mind that that includes students who are in the district of residence, and if you have a private school in your district and they live in a different district but are attending in your district, they're part of your child count. And Jamie, if I ever say anything wrong as I'm going through, please stop me, but I'm on a roll here. So keep in mind that child count is this annual activity. We do have here the difference between the two. So again, child find, ongoing. Child count once a year. Child count is really about determining the number of students. So you need to record this count and hold on to it, because you're going to need this number. You're going to need this number when you go to submit your 240 and your 262 grant to us. We're going to ask you to fill in, when you did this count between October 1 and December 1, how many students were there? You need to tell us. That's the basis for the funding that you're going to set aside, that will tell you how to set aside on those two grants in the upcoming year. So child find, ongoing, child count, one, sort of a dipstick between October 1 and December 1 to figure out that number, but hold on to it. It's really important to keep that safe and secure. I'm not going to go into evaluation and determination of eligibility a lot here, because it's something we already talked about a little bit about, who's responsible for conducting an evaluation. I think maybe one important thing to say is that, let's just imagine you are the district of location, right? So, I was a special ed director in West Springfield. So if there was a student who lived in Chicopee and went to West Springfield to attend a private school, and they came to me as a special ed director and said, I want to be evaluated, my answer is yes, I can evaluate you from the district of location. But there's some differences between what I can do and what your district of residence can do. District of residence can find you eligible for special education, right? I can find you eligible as a student with a disability to be counted for proportionate share services, but I can't offer an IEP if I'm only the district of location. And so I just want to make sure that you know that if you are only the district of location and not the district of residence, if you're asked to complete an evaluation, you do have to do it. It is a requirement. It's just there's a limit to what you can do with the information from the evaluation. And it's important for parents to kind of be thinking through what are they trying to get from the evaluation. It might be that they could be better served going to the district of residence to get that evaluation, but you can't disabuse them of that. You can't say, no, go to your district of residence. If they want you to do it, it is your responsibility. So I think that's just important to keep in mind. Then one other thing that I just want to mention is about the proportionate share expenditure. So like we mentioned, so you're going to get that child count, you're going to hold on to it between October 1 and December 1, you're going to put it someplace safe. You're going to know what that number is. Then along about July, we're going to ask you to apply for the grant for next school year. And when you go to do that, you're going to have to tell us that child count number in order to figure out the proportion of the next year's grant, next fiscal year's grant, that you are going to draw out for parentally placed students. And let me just show you that in this particular part of the tool, we have, here it is, sorry, I went past it. There's some good videos about how to think about the calculation for the 240 grant. You can just watch this narrated video about calculating for 240, and then information about calculating for 262. So when the time comes, if you have any questions, just encourage you to use this tool. Let me just round this out real quick of showing you our tool by really quickly looking at what else is here. We have the part about services plans, which is so important to think about that document that looks a little bit just like the service delivery grid of an IEP. You're going to develop just this form for our children who are parentally placed, who are accessing services through proportionate share. That form that you're going to fill out, the annual services plan, it looks a lot like just the services delivery grid from the IEP. And it does not require a parent signature. It's advisable, but you don't have to have it in order to provide those services. And if you, when you come to this section, again, you'll see that we have more information about the difference between IEPs and services plans, which we want to keep reminding ourselves of. And we have information about thinking about, do you provide the services directly or do you contract them out? Either one is fine. And so I hope you'll find that useful in terms of just an understanding of what this is all in service of, all the consultation, the calculation, the child find is all in services of getting services, is all in service of getting services to students. And we're doing that with our services plans. I promise I'm close to the end. If your eyes aren't glazing over on a few other tools that we have built into here, our resources section can quickly get you to some of what I've shown you during this presentation today. So for example, I told you about the sample letters for a consultation and written affirmation and child find. Our quick reference guides are here. Let me just show them to you really quickly. So one quick reference guide is about allowable costs. This is really important, right? What can we spend proportionate share dollars on? Mainly direct service. Like the main thing to think about is we're trying to get service to students. There can be, though, indirect services like PD, materials, equipment, And you're going to decide this through consultation. When you're having those consultation meetings, how are we going to expend the dollars? You know, obviously, like we have here, our preferred methodology is direct services, but you can also provide indirect services and transportation. What you can't do are things like child find or repairs or reimbursement directly to schools or to parents. The money never flows directly to the private school or to the parents. It's going to services that you're contracting for or that you're providing through your own district. So I hope that's helpful in terms of allowable costs. Another important QRG that we have, again, we all learn in different ways. So we have this information, we say the same thing in several different ways. This quick reference guide could be useful for you to use just to go through all of the aspects of equitable services and, you know, all in one place. So it's a little briefer and could be something useful to share with team members if you just need to remind people about the steps they need to take. I would encourage you to use that. So let me just go back to our presentation really quickly. I hope you're finding this helpful if it's sort of, you know, just making sure you're seeing all the components of equitable services. And again, on this page, you're able to go directly to our homepage, our webpage about equitable services. Remember, everything I just showed you is also here. And it's a great landing point, a great starting point. But as we go back to where we were, in our presentation that we will be putting in the chat for you and sending out afterwards, putting it online, we just tried to recap the kind of the timeline for the school year. So, you know, this would be a good self-check right now. If you haven't done some of these things, please do them, like getting your first consultation meetings set up, getting those services plans written. It's the end of September now, so maybe just a good self-check. Do you have services plans written? Because, you know, services aren't flowing until we get those services plans written. So get them written based on consultation, right? You're not just going to write them without having consultation first. So we do that meaningful consultation and then we write our services plan. We know we've got the child count window between October and December. Our recommendation is then to come back with another consultation meeting. And then in January, that next consultation meeting, reviewing our expenditures during the year, making sure we're spending down the dollars. I didn't talk about carryover, but I really so strongly discourage carryover. Let's get the dollars spent during this fiscal year, not have carryover. And then round out that consultation meeting at the end of the year. You can begin to write new services plans based on any consultation meeting. So you can, you know you're going to have proportionate dollars to spend next year. So you can, when you're having that end of year review, you can begin thinking about and planning for next year, kind of depending on how you parse out the meetings. You can loop back around and, you know, maybe totally get that done in August, but there's nothing preventing you at any point from developing services plans. I would like nothing more than for students to have that like continuous services opportunity as opposed to, you know, waiting until later in the fall to begin to get their services. I'm just going to quickly show you that we have some other slides here for you to take a look at. That we have our use of child count data. I would encourage you to take a look at this slide, our action steps related to consultation. And just to let you know that we met this summer, we had a great working group with special education directors and representatives from private schools to talk about how we can improve all of these processes. And so we'll probably be coming back out with some more resources and supports later in this school year. So I hope that's helpful. I hope that gives you a sense of your obligations related to proportionate share to equitable services. Just remind you to, you know, go to our webpage. If there's anything you need, I would encourage you, you know, just to really help this information lock in, to take a look at it afterwards. And please let us know if you have any questions. So thanks for your attention on this important topic. I'm going to now go into presentation mode and turn the mic over to Jonathan Spadafora to talk about submitting for ISPs.
Yes, great. Thank you so much, Russell. Nina Marquise just has a brief announcement she wants to make.
I just wanted to let everybody know that some of the links aren't working. So we will post the presentation with the updated links so that way you can pay attention to the presentation. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for taking time on this Friday afternoon to conduct this overview. And Russell, thank you again for the opportunity. What we're going to be touching on today is the individual student program application process, otherwise known as the ISP process. I'd like to follow up on an announcement we made earlier this week through the commissioner update announcing our new online form. It replaces our 28M3 form, which was a downloadable Word version of a form posted on our PRS website that those familiar with this process, and as I'm sure many are, would have to complete and submit to us along with a series of supporting documentation to request approval for an out-of-district placement in an unapproved private special education school. Russell, if you want to turn to the next slide. I just want to touch on some of the required documentation throughout this application process. The main one being the 28M3 form, which is now available online, and I will be conducting a brief tutorial on in a moment. Our Operational Services Division Mass Budget Form, the contract with the private school, as well as a monitoring plan, and then a current student IEP PO1 that must be signed as well. If you want to turn to the next slide here, this is where I will break out into sharing my screen, kind of walk through the first section, which is the required documentation checklist, then touch on the sections of the 28M3 form, the student info section, public school, private school info section. Hold on one moment here, bring up the online form. So this is the portal to our new ISP online form. This replaces the downloadable Word version of that 28M3 form. The one change you'll see here is the top section is the required documentation checklist. We've now made it a requirement that the supporting documents will need to be uploaded and submitted, as well as the completion of this ISP web form / 28M3 form. Document 1 and 2, those are required on file locally. Document 3, 4, 5, and 6 are what I want to hit on. Document 3 is the mass budget forms. Those must be completed and signed by the unapproved private school. On that mass budget form, you're going to want to make sure you have the annual rate, the one-to-one rate, the fee number, the number of days the student is placed there for, as well as the signature of the unapproved program. One thing to hit on is if it is an out-of-state program, not in Massachusetts, we can accept a statement by the host state, or almost like a letterhead, a state letterhead that has a tuition and pricing information on it. But that is only for out-of-state programs. If it is an in-state program, you will need to complete the Mass OSD budget form. The fourth piece of documentation required here is a contract between the public and unapproved private school. This contract must be signed by both parties, the LEA and the unapproved private school. It also has 5 elements that we require. Once I go back to the presentation, I'll just kind of hit on each one of those 5 requirements. The fifth piece of documentation is a monitoring plan, and that's just how the public school plans to monitor this placement, whether it's on-site visits, attending IEP meetings, conference calls, progress reporting. That's, again, when we go back to the presentation, I can hit on those requirements as well. And finally, document 6 is going to be a current and signed version of the IEP and PL1 placement pages. You must upload each of these documents in order to even be able to submit this online form. So that is important to remember. Those are all required fields. And unless you upload each supporting document after you've gone through this form here and completed every section, it will not allow you to submit unless you've done so. So here, this begins our first section of the 28M3 form, which is now our online form. It's the student placement information section, just all the student info, name, date of birth, SACID, the current IEP start and end date. Request type, you'll see, is whether this is an initial placement or a renewal placement if the student has been placed at this program previously. The program type is whether it's a day or a residential, or a day summer or residential summer. And then you need to list the proposed placement start and end dates for this placement. The following section is for the public school district info, just all your contact info. We collect the superintendent and special ed director info from directory administration, which is tied to school district profiles. So that's set up with this form and with our database to automatically pull. This is mostly important for if it's a third party or an administrator that's submitting this on behalf of the special ed director. So please make sure you list all your contact information, just so we can be sure that you're included throughout this, this approval process, and we CC you all our memos and approvals from OSD. The following section here is just your justification, why you determine the unapproved program to be the appropriate placement for this student. Just brief, doesn't have to be a novel. The following section here is for the unapproved special education school. Again, just their contact info. One of the more important fields here is the program code. It's a 4-digit code for this unapproved private special ed school. A lot of districts may not be aware of it or how to access it. If that's the case, when I refer back to my slides, you can contact Elena DeMellon, who is in our school business office here at DESE. She has an entire list that she keeps record of and tracks that includes those 4-digit codes. So you could either contact me and I could refer you to Eleanor, you could contact her directly. You'll have that information in the slides to refer to if you need to discover that code. The final section here is just a statement of assurances. So we just need you to read these assurances and just below select that you agree. This basically acts as your signature, what would have been your signature on the 28M3 form. And once you'll see that you notice you don't even see a chance to submit. It's because this form hasn't been filled out completely. So once you upload all the supporting documents, complete the entire form, hit check off you agree, you'll actually see a submit icon that appears that you'll be able to then finally submit. Once you submit, a notification email is sent from, it's either going to come from IT Service Desk or it will be ESE at mass.gov. It will include a snapshot of this 28M3 form that you just submitted, as well as the supporting documents that you attached. It will have an ISP ticket number, which is going to be the number you associate that application and that student with. And it's sent to the superintendent, the SPED director, as well as a third-party contact if different than the SPED director or superintendent that might have been listed on that section of this form. It's also sent to myself and my support staff, so we're notified that, hey, an application has been submitted, so then we can begin our review, and if meets all requirements, we can move it over to Jacqueline Brown at Operational Services Division for official approval. She sets the rates and actually issues the official approval memo with your tuition reimbursement. So that's pretty much it. That's the form in general. Like I said, it's just replacing our 28M3 form. So it's now available online, gonna really make this process more efficient, really streamline it. It's very easy to use. like I said, you just got to remember, you hit all these requirements, you attach all your supporting documents and fill the form out completely, and you won't have any issues. I'm just going to go back to the presentation now, unshare my screen. Thank you. All right, so we just hit on this. If we could just move to the next slide. So this here is to just touch on the requirements of the supporting documents. The first one being the Operational Services Division budget form. Like I said, you just need to make sure that form has an annual rate, a one-to-one rate, a fee number, the number of placement days, and then most importantly, the signature of the unapproved program. I have templates of these. If anybody does need, you can follow up with me personally, individually. I can share that document with you, because like I said, if it is in state, you will need to use that official OSD budget form. And again, out of state, you could use a statement by the host state or any sort of tuition or pricing information that is on an out-of-state letterhead. This next piece of documentation is the contract between the public school and the unapproved private school. It does need to be signed by both parties. That's very important. We can't process it without both signatures. And I'll just briefly kind of hit on these 5 elements that are required to be within the contract. The out-of-district placement must comply with all elements of the IEP, obviously. The out-of-district placement must allow the LEA to monitor and evaluate the education of the student. The out-of-district placement must allow the LEA or DESE to conduct announced or unannounced site visits to review all documents relating to the provision of special ed services to the student. The out-of-district placement shall afford publicly funded students all procedural rights held by eligible students, including but not limited to those specified in 603 CMR 2809. And finally, no school district shall contract with any out-of-district placement that discriminates on the grounds of race, color, religion, sexual orientation, national origin, etc. We could move to the next slide. This is the school district monitoring plan. This just needs to state how you plan to monitor that student's placement at that setting. So on-site visits, IEP team meetings, phone calls, progress reporting, incident reporting, MCAS results, very simple. This can just be on a district letterhead and just list the examples of how you plan to monitor that placement. Finally, is the signed and current IEP and PL1. That is important. It must be current and it must be signed. And now it is required for both day and residential placements. Previously, it was just a requirement for residential placements only, but now we are requiring it on behalf of both day summer, residential summer placements. And that is pretty much it for the required documentation you must submit in addition to that 28M3 form, which is now our online form. This is just a couple of references for you. The online portal is posted on our PRS special approvals and notices page. And below is the actual hyperlink to a direct link to the online form. And the next slide, I think, just has my contact info, I believe. Yep, so I asked, any questions or really kind of assistance you need, specifically tech assistance with this form or any issues you're having, please feel free to contact me personally, individually, and I'll do the best I can to assist. And like I said, we work hand in hand with the school business office and operational services division, so it's possible, I loop in Elena DeMelon's office or Jacqueline Brown's office for assistance. But that's it. Thank you for the opportunity. I know it's such exciting content to review on a Friday afternoon. You probably just hard to contain your excitement right now, but I appreciate the time. Thank you so much.
Jonathan, that was excellent. Thank you very, very much. Really excited about this transition to an online form. Hopefully it'll just make the whole process easier. more 21st century. So thank you very, very much. I know we're over time. Why don't we just see, Nina, if there are a few pressing questions, just want to show, we'll stop the recording in just a
Can you
second.
turn yours off?
But just want to mention that we have the meetings coming up October 22nd and November 19th, just so you can make note of those times. And with that, I will actually conclude today's presentation and just say thank you to all of you. Have a good rest of the day. But we'll stay for Q&A. So Nina, what have you got?